I have 3 different servers in 3 different cities, each installed with a fresh copy of Ubuntu 20.04. I'm going to install Mongo on each of these servers. Then I'm going to I'll start up Mongo on one of the servers. So let's say this one, and then I'll insert some data into it. Once I've done that, I'm going to enable replication so that any content that's added into the primary database, let's say this one, it'll automatically be replicated to the other member databases. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, because these are fresh installations of Ubuntu, I should probably do some updates on it. Let's just do that. And probably upgrade the distribution. Just copy this for a moment. Yes. And I'll let this thing run when it's, so I'll pause and let this thing run. When it's done, yeah, I'll resume the recording. While in the middle of the distribution upgrade, you might be asked to something about the SSHD config file. You can either install the packagers version or keep the local version. It doesn't really matter in our case because it's just a demonstration. I'll just keep the local version of that. Okay, the upgrade's almost done. I'm just gonna cheat a little bit because I don't have a photographic memory, so it's hard for me to memorize the IP addresses of each one of these servers. So I'm gonna cheat by editing the host file of the system, and I'm just going to paste in these 3 IP addresses are going to map to these 3 domain names. db1-1.evermind.com, that'll map to this server. This server over here, this URL is going to map to this server, and this URL is going to map to this server. So I'm just going to save that. That way I don't have to type in IP addresses. I just type in the fully qualified domain name and it'll reference those servers. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. Oops. Let me just copy this again. I have another monitor, and I'm just copying it from another text file that I have. Let me just do that. All right, and I'll wait for this thing to finish. It's almost done. So we'll give it a moment. And there we go. So let's edit this host file. Okay, so let's go ahead and install Mongo. I'm just gonna paste some instructions that you can find almost anywhere online on how to install Mongo. So these are pretty standard steps. I'll include it in the description of this video or some link to it. Some link to these instructions afterwards. So just update. And let's go ahead and install Mongo. Yes. And we'll apply the same instructions to the other windows. Just copying and pasting. These instructions are pretty standard, nothing unusual here. Right, and the third server as well. All right, so Mongo should be installed on each of these servers now. Let's go ahead and, well, we can confirm that by just tagging this. So you can see that Mongo is installed. Let's actually get it up and running. And if I type, so the first time you start Mongo, you're going to be the administrator, but then and you can verify that by going I think show databases, right? If you exit and you restart the Mongo service, the next time you type in Mongo, you're going to have to supply, if you want write access to some databases, you're going to have to log in with an actual user. So we're going to create an administrative user just so we will be able to log in again afterwards, after we restart the service. So I'm going to go to the admin database, going to go ahead and paste this in here. So now I should be able to log in as that user. Mongo-u admin. Great, so everything is fine. So at this point, I think I just want to create some content in this, what we'll call this the primary database. I want to create some content in here so that when we enable replication, the content from this primary database actually gets replicated to these member databases, right? These secondary databases. You don't have to create any content. The reason I want to go through this scenario is because it will be typical of what a lot of developers will face. They start off building an application with a single database, only to realize later that they need to do replication to other databases. So that's the scenario I want to go with. But you don't have to. You could always start with no databases, and so you can skip these next few steps and just go straight to the replication. But we'll go ahead and make a database. Show collections. So there's nothing here. Let's just add a record. I think that's it. All right, so there's one record in here, and of course, if I start off right, this database has nothing, doesn't have the Evermites database. This one does because we haven't done any replication. So all three servers are just sitting in isolation of each other. So at this point, let's actually get into setting up replication. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit out of here. Let's just exit out of here. Let me just clear the screen to clean everything up, just so we don't have an eyesore. All right, so what's the first thing we do? The first thing we need to do is set up a Mongo key file. The Mongo key file is going to be used for authentication between all three of these servers. So let's make up that folder. We'll need it on all three servers. Then we're going to generate a Mongo key file with this command here. So it's just using OpenSSL to generate some kind of private key. And this key that's made, we have to keep it secret, all right? Don't email it, it shouldn't be public. This key file needs to be copied over to these two other servers. And it's based on this file that these three servers are able to talk to each other and communicate with each other. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy that file from this server to the second server, right? So SCP, this file, over to DB2, which is this one. All right, and let's copy it to the third server as well. All right, so that file should now be on each of these servers. And we can confirm that. T files, yep, and that's there. So let's run the same command over here. Yep, so that's there. Next, we need to edit the Mongo configuration file. All right. Now there's quite a few security things that you normally should be doing, but we're going to skip a lot of those things because we just want to focus on replication. And how you set up security would be specific to your work environment or your network requirements. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to change this to 0.0.0.0. This allows Mongo connections from any source IP address. Right? This isn't going to be the most secure way of doing things. Hopefully, you'll use something like a firewall to prevent to blacklist unauthorized IP access. So let's go over here. We are going to enable security, or let's uncomment this line. And we are going to paste in the location of our key file here. Like that. Right? And we're going to have to make the same edits to these servers over here as well. Okay. So they're going to be the exact same changes. All right, so it's just 2 spaces between here. All right, let's exit out of here, exit out of here. All right, so we've got our key files all set up, and we've told our Mongo configuration file to reference those files. Let's make sure we set the appropriate permissions on the Mongo key file. So I'm going to chmod to 400. Oh, right, this user doesn't exist yet. It's not actually named MongoDB. On various distributions might have a different name for this user. There we go. So it's the MongoDB user. Let's do that as well. And let's also chown 400 on them. Always good to reduce be less open about the permissions. Okay, so I think we've got everything set up. Let me just clear the screen again so that it's not so much of an eyesore. Okay, so let's stop the Mongo service because we want to start up in replication mode and not just the normal mode. CTO stop. All right, and let's go ahead and start up the service. And this is the command that you can run. You can run MongoDB again. And when you start up, you're going to have to give a replication set name. And it can be anything you want, right? Probably use machine-friendly names, just alphanumeric, maybe with hyphens. So I'll just go ahead and do that. We're going to reference our configuration file, and we're going to run this in a detached mode or behind running in the background as opposed to running in the foreground. Some Linux distributions, in the way you install Mongo, you might not need this -- fork flag to have it run in the background. So sometimes it's just automatic that'll run in the background. So I'm going to do that. And we will run the same command on the other servers so that they are all going to start up in the replication mode. All right, and that should be good. All right, and now let's go ahead and go into the service. Okay. All right, that's a good sign that we've started the replication mode, and now we actually tell this this database where to replicate to. And we do that with the initiate command. So I have it in another window here. I'm just going to take a copy of it. All right, and I'm going to paste it in here. So this is the command that you run, rs initiate. Now this ID needs to match exactly the this replication set name that you've written up here. Right, so whatever you picked here, then this command needs to be the same as that. Or this ID needs to be the same as that replication set name. And these are the 3 members that are going to be part of this replication set. Hit enter. And I think we should be good. It should start replicating. And if you type rs status, you can see right, DB1 is the secondary. Is it? All right, this is DB2 is also secondary. Well, one of these should be a primary. Let me. Sometimes it could. Oh, there we go. When you start the rs initiate, depending on how large your database is on this primary one or this main database, if it's a really large one, it could take a few minutes or a few seconds or even hours, I guess, for these member databases to warm up before Mongo is able to decide which one is the actual primary database and which ones are the secondary. So now that everything is replicated, say show databases on the primary, everything should still work fine. Right? Now you can see that there's a users collection here, just like we had before. Now let's actually take a look at this one, right? So actually, let's take a look at the status again. The status here was saying, oh yeah, state. Okay, the fact that it says secondary means it's up. If it were still warming up, I believe the word that you would see here is like warm up or startup to indicate that these databases are still warming up or starting up, copying the relevant data over to their over to its own server. So I think DB3 and DB2, is it fine? Yeah, DB2 should be fine. So let's go ahead and go in here. And if you type here, I'll make it a bit bigger. Oops, it's a little bit too big. Let me just move it around this way. You can see this is currently a secondary database. It reports the same statistics as the one that we ran on the first database. Now, if you say show databases, let's see what happens. Oh, it won't let you do it unless you type rs secondary OK. Right? This will allow you to have read access and I believe in write access from a secondary database. Right, now you type show databases. And now you can see that there's the Evermite database here. Show collections. Right? And now it's been replicated to the secondary database. Let's and we should see the same thing in the third database here. Okay. We want to enable read access from this secondary database. And there you go. So content from database 1 has been replicated to the second and third databases. So let's show databases, or let's use Evermite. Let's insert another record. Okay, and if you do this on the secondary database, you can see it's been replicated over here. And third database has also been replicated here. A few things to note is if I shut down this database, Okay, there should be some kind of automatic voting that happens, and one of these, either database 2 or database 3, is going to become the primary. So let's take a look at the status. It looks like database 2 has become the primary, right? And database 3 remains the secondary member. If you scroll up, let's take a look. Database 1 is unreachable, as you can see over here. Database 2 has become the primary. Okay. If you bring this server back up, let's exit for a moment. Let's bring this up again. In fact, before I even do that, let's insert another record. All right, let's insert another record. All right. Oh, whoops. I renamed. It should be. Okay, well, that's okay. Now we have 2 collections because I made a typing mistake. And we have 2 collections. This also has 2 collections. Let's go ahead and start up the primary database again. And if we type rs.status, we should see that database 1 should have come back online. Yep, it's come back online as a secondary database. Database 2 remains primary. And if I log in, sorry, show collections. Oh, rs.secondary, okay. You can see that the content from this primary database on DB2 has been replicated to the first database, or the first server over here. If 2 of these servers are down, if I do DB shutdown on 2 of them, I believe the third one will fail as well. From what I've seen is that you must have a minimum of 2 servers active in a replication set. If you only have 1 server, then the whole network fails, from my experience. But if anyone has discovered differently or understands the situation better, just let me know. So I think that's all I have to show when it comes to setting up the basics of replication. Again, we've bypassed we skipped a lot of things around security. I want to focus just showing the setup of replication without making it too complicated.